Well, let's stay with the emotional aspect a little bit. How did really, I mean, for a lot of people, imagining close to $250,000 worth of debt, most people would say, oh my gosh, you know, what would I do if I were there? How did you feel about that? How did it feel to you?
It was terrifying. It was, I saw no way short of winning the lottery that I was going to pay off that debt.
Right.
I was losing hair. I was losing sleep. I lost a girlfriend because I just couldn't focus on anything in my life except the debt. I was waking up thinking, what am I going to do? I was going to not sleeping thinking, what am I going to do? I was paying.
So it was very difficult for you to be in a positive mood.
It was horrifying, yeah. I was paying almost $4,000 a month in interest on my credit cards. I was going through savings very fast. And part of my journey, the first step that eventually allowed me to get out of debt, which we'll talk about, was dealing with the emotional aspect. Most people, almost everybody, attaches some level of emotionality to finance, and certainly to debt.
Oh, everybody. In fact, I just did on a radio show an interview not too long ago with someone who is an expert on the topic about how finances affect your relationship, whether you're married or not.
Sure.
It's a #1 concern of everybody.
Absolutely. And the big journey that I went on was learning how to separate emotion, and particularly negative emotion or self-judgment, from debt. So instead of having what I think is a very common thing in our society now, where if you're in a point where you can't manage your debts, you can't pay off your debts, or, you know, God forbid you want to file bankruptcy, a lot of people take that on as meaning something bad about themselves. I'm a bad person. What's wrong with me?
It's got to be destructive for your self-esteem.
Yeah. And so what I learned was not to do that.
Right. How long did you go on that roller coaster of emotions?
That was about 6 months. I was paying the interest every month. I was sliding quickly towards bankruptcy, and I was really terrified. And it was during that time that I had some really serious breakdowns. And finally, through some, you know, self-examination and getting some help, figured out that it's possible, at least for me it was, and I think for anybody, to live with debt and not let the debt live you, is what I say.
That's a good way of putting it. Let's talk about the bankruptcy option for a moment. Did that even occur to you that you wanted to go that road?
It did.
Was that an option for you?
It did. I visited a bankruptcy attorney to discuss my options. You know, if I wasn't able to sell the film as quickly as I wanted to, which I wasn't because the economy collapsed, the credit market collapsed, people weren't buying films like they were in my past experience. Right. What are my other options? So we talked about bankruptcy, and then it was in that meeting with my bankruptcy attorney that I first heard about the process of debt settlement, which I'd never heard of before. I was surprised to hear of it, the concept of calling your credit card company or bank and offering less than you owed to settle your debt was
See, that's a well-kept secret. They don't really want you to know about
Well, now the secret's out of the bag. It's all over the internet. There's so many debt consolidation companies out there. But prior to the last 6 months, it was a well-kept secret. They did not want people to know. I think that generation to generation for hundreds of years, there's been a social impression among individual people that you're a bad person if you can't manage your debts. It's not that way in the business world. Corporate CEOs reshuffle, restructure, buy off trade, and sell debt every day.
We see that all the time.
We see it all the time. Banks do it all the time. The business of the world when it comes to finance treats debt as a commodity with no emotional attachment to it. And yet we as individuals are still taught that there's something bad.
Well, because we also have a sense of responsibility, and we cannot deny that we need to have a sense of responsibility too.
Yeah, and to me, responsibility would mean you're not ignoring your debt, you're not running away from it, you're not pretending it's not there, but approaching it, speaking to your banks, and working out a settlement that works for everybody is still very responsible. It's taking control of your finances and managing them in a way that suits your and your family's needs. One of the things I say in my book is that I consider every individual out there to be the CEO of their own corporation, the corporation of you.
And that's true. And the same thing with the President of the United States. It's really the head of a CEO of a big company, and the company is the United States of America.
Right.
Let's go, because you did write a book about the debt settlement.
I did.
And how can you just get us into the process of what you went through with that debt settlement, how you went through that all the steps?
I'd be happy to. The book's called The Do-It-Yourself Bailout.
Okay.
And it basically tracks my progress from the day my attorney said, this is possible, to me going out and doing some research to figure out how to do it. And what I found, this is last year, that I really couldn't find any information. I couldn't find anything on the internet or in libraries that people had written that talked about the actual process of debt settlement.
So you decided to write the book about it?
Well, I decided to do it. I found a lot of companies, and they're still out there, who say they'll do it for you, and they want you to pay them a fee. And what I found is that they wanted to make me feel like I couldn't do it myself, so that I would hire them. I decided to do it myself. I had 7 different accounts with 6 major U.S. banks. You'd recognize the names of all of them. They ranged from about $25,000 balances up to $75,000 balances. One of the things that almost anywhere you look about debt settlement will tell you is that the first step is you have to stop making payments on your credit cards. Because the credit card companies, if you call them up and you're current, and you say, I'd like to reach an agreement, they're not interested.
They won't talk to you until, right.
Miss 2 or 3 payments,
then
suddenly they're going to start calling you. And because I had 6 different banks, I was getting a lot of phone calls. 5, 6 phone calls a day sometimes with these collection agents. And what I started to notice was that there was a pattern between all the banks and all the collection agents. They had the same patter on the phone. They said the same things at the beginning of the call, the same things in the middle of the call.
They're all scripted.
They're all scripted. And when I started to notice that pattern, I realized this is a process. This is not me out on a raft in a storm by myself trying to figure something out. This is a structured industry. This is how they're doing their side of the business. I'm going to approach it like a business. And instead of being scared or groveling for whatever I could get,
you became rational about it. So your thinking was more clear and you can take some actions.
And then as I got better at listening to the phone calls, I always treated everybody on the phone with respect. You know, I think what their job is to make you on the other side of the phone get emotional. The more emotional they can get you, the more likely you are to write a higher check.
Right,
to
so
them.
they win.
So they win.
Yeah.
And if you can manage to say, thank you very much, I understand, I get it, I'm working with you, this is what I can do, can you accept that? You start making offers. I started making my offers around 20%. They started making their offers around 85%. And after another month, they came down to 55, and after another month, they came down around 35, and I wound up settling most of my credit cards in the 30 to 35% range, and ultimately reduced my $212,000 in debt to $30,000 in just about 6 months.
I'm sure you have a website. You're a businessman. You have a website. How can we find out about it? What's the website address?
I do. The website is www.settleyourcreditcards.com, and that's where you can find the do-it-yourself bailout.
Okay, cool. Kenny, thank you very much for coming on the program today.
Thank you for having me.